I don't stop myself from thinking of horror things along the way as I think about as these characters start to kind of grow out of nothing. You also then little, the scary thoughts start to creep in, like what can I do to these poor unsuspecting people? But keep on working on those characters, keep on working on those character elements. That's a very, very important aspect.
Hey, Lee, thanks for taking the time and
Hey Owen, how are you?
doing great. Thanks. So the first thing I wanted to ask you was there. I noticed one or two camera moments and some other stuff in this film that felt very Sam Raimi. So I'm curious. How much were you trying to pay homage to the previous films while also kind of doing your own thing with this one?
I think there's some obvious ones in terms of the Force point of view, which I always wanted to have that classic Evil Dead feel. I wanted to represent it in a way that was familiar. So that was obviously something. And again, Sam's a filmmaker that's inspired me, to have a career in movie making. He's a filmmaker I look up to. So there's probably little touches of my influence in projects outside of Evil Dead as well in their own right. But I think for me, it was all about forging my own path. And because you have to trust your own instinct and your own vision and your own eye and that of your team that you're working with. So there was a couple of places where I very much wanted to firmly tip the cap to the past, but it was equally important to push on and create this new and fresh, terrifying experience.
And this is obviously not your first like foray into the genre or anything. I'm really curious when you are developing a story or a screenplay for Evil Dead or one of your other films, where do you start? Do you start thinking of like the set pieces and those really horror moments first, or do you start with character or something else?
I definitely start with character, circumstances, that kind of context usually. Like, who is this story about is probably the most important question you need to ask yourself at the beginning. And I don't stop myself from thinking of horror things along the way as I think about as these characters start to kind of grow out of nothing. You also then little, the scary thoughts start to creep in, like what can I do to these poor unsuspecting people? But keep on working on those characters, keep on working on those character elements. That's a very, very important aspect.
And like you said, Sam Raimi has been an influence for you. Uh, Coming into this film, like outside of the Necronomicon, being an element, like what do you think is kind of the DNA of Evil Dead?
It's something I've thought about a lot. I think it's something I knew instinctively. It's the entertainment factor, because being scared is also entertaining. Being terrified is also entertaining. Being mildly amused is also, and it's entertaining. And for me, I think that the most important thing I wanted to carry through was that energy, that entertainment factor. I wanted to make a really, really scary movie, but I also want people to have a good time at the movies when they watch it. That was really, really important to me. And I think that's something you can say about Evil Dead movies of the past, is that they have this thrill ride quality. And I wanted to build my own roller coaster my own way, but to carry forth that DNA from the past so that you had an experience in a really unique and cinematic way.
I'm also very curious, like, are there other places that maybe as you were writing this or just as you were making it, like other places that you would love to see this world or any of these characters go?
Yeah, like I've got thoughts on where, you feel ownership over your characters when you create them, because these are new characters in the Evil Dead world. They've no connection to the past. And I certainly have thoughts on where their journeys go next, those that might just make it out of the darkness, and also those that might still be stuck in the darkness, as we know with Evil Dead lore, could still have a part to play. So I definitely have little ideas boiling around what this kind of crack in the universe could lead to.
That's awesome. I think that's my time, but thank you so much. I got the chance to see this last week. It's so good.
Thank you
It's
so much.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Thank you very much. Glad you enjoyed the movie.